Greeting, fellow citizens of Disneyland. Brickey here with our monthly check-in to downtown Disney. There is so much happening on the western end of downtown Disney. New buildings popping up, old buildings going away. What do you say? Join me today as we walk all through downtown Disney, looking at all of the new things that have popped up and try to project where this part of the park is going, and a bug just flew in my mouth. Let's get today's video started. What a horrible starting. Now, over on the edge of the downtown Disney Sarlacc pit, we do still have construction projects sort of popping out, making a really tight spot between the construction wall and the edge of the Disneyland monorail, which, speaking of, right on time. But this project has now been going on for almost 18 months. The pit has been basically in this state for a year. We will hop on the monorail later on today and check it out from the sky. If you remember, the area that I'm standing in had a construction project that was happening here. It's now open. It looks like the footprint might be a little bit different, but also what I think is fascinating is that all of the benches have been removed. And this used to be one of the absolute best places that you could go, find a place to sit, kind of chill when you're taking a break from the park or kind of resting before you walked out to your car. So I do hope that these benches come back, because this was a nice little quiet area inside of downtown Disney, which is an area that I like to hang out in. Now, I absolutely love these tile mosaics out front. And that little logo right there, that is absolutely fantastic.
But you have to give us $5.
$5, you got it. So I know that I'm alone here, but I absolutely love the way that Ralph Brennan's Jazz Kitchen is looking. The guys in there painting the murals right now on the wall. I absolutely adore this color scheme. I love the magenta and orange and how they're going with a geometric description of what's happening here. I know that I'm alone, but what I like about it is it feels more modern. It feels more mid-century modern. It feels like Palm Springs. To me, it feels like California. I believe that the Ralph Brennan's Jazz Kitchen transformation is absolutely way better than what it was. Before, you had something that was very kitschy, very novelty, very roadside attraction. And I love that this version of the Jazz Kitchen looks like it belongs in California. It's going to match all the other buildings around it. And keep in mind, there's a New Orleans square inside of Disneyland. So to make a cheaper knockoff version out here in downtown Disney, I just never liked it. I always thought it was an eyesore. I didn't enjoy the big saxophone out on the edge of the building when you walked up. I just feel like this looks so much better, so much more California. And really, when you think about it, downtown Disney is designed for obviously anybody that comes to the Disneyland Resort, but it's specifically designed for people that stay in the 3 Disneyland hotels, which are the most expensive guests on property. They're spending the most amount of money. So therefore, I do feel like that the downtown transformation is designed to make those vacations feel more like those folks are visiting California. When you look at all the beautiful, bright orange chairs on the lower level of the patio, when you look at what I think are just fantastic geometric murals on the outside wall and the interior courtyard wall, it has a very distinct California vibe, a mid-century California vibe, which, if you've noticed, as Disneyland over the last few years has made transformations, they always are leaning to a mid-century modern, sort of the California aesthetic. Sometimes it's googie, sometimes it's postmodern, but they're leaning into this sort of consistently low-key Disneyland resort design aesthetic, which I'm a huge fan of because it's distinctly California. And for a long time, there were so many different bits and pieces that didn't actually match together. And I believe this transformation is about stitching all of these different ideas together to deliver a more genuine California experience to out-of-town guests. That's my theory. So speaking of that transformation, as I understand, Tortilla Joe's is next on the chopping block. because it simply doesn't match that new aesthetic. There would be a chance that they could go for that Southern California Spanish-inspired architecture that we see in so many of our cities and neighborhoods. But I do believe that this is on the chopping block, because as just in front of me, I can see a more high-end Mexican cuisine that's coming to the resort. Tortilla Joe's days are numbered, as I understand, and this will be the next big major project to happen here in downtown Disney. And of course, if you subscribe to the channel, you can follow us all along the way. So when we stand here in this courtyard, you can see Disney uses a bend in the road technique so that we can't see straight into the esplanade where the two parks are. There's a curve, like an S curve, in the overall shape of downtown Disney. So when we stand here, we are surrounded by a wall of buildings, making us feel like there's so much for us to check out, even though it's a pretty small footprint. But as we zoom in a little, you can see how all of the buildings are positioned in a way to where they create an aesthetic dead end. And the problem is, with too many different design trends, when you look into this wall of buildings, it can look like a design clash versus one cohesive design aesthetic, which is why I believe they felt like Ralph Brennan's Jazz Kitchen had to be changed, because it just didn't match when you looked into that vision. And now that makes Tortilla Joe's the real outlier, and then redundant with new, more upscale Mexican food coming to downtown Disney. But currently, Splitsville acts as the newest kid on the block. This is the newest construction in downtown Disney. And you can see this aesthetic is that design decision that Disney keeps making whenever they're given the opportunity to add more architecture to the park. And me personally, I love the design aesthetic of Splitsville. I would enjoy more and more and more of this. So if this is what we're gonna see over in the Sarlacc pit, I'm very excited for the future of downtown Disney. And I might kind of represent who this land is designed for, because I'm not born and raised in California. To me, California was a daydream. It was a golden land of promises, and I had to fight like hell to live here. I think all of this aesthetic is designed to make people feel like they're getting that California trip that they've saved up for, as ambitious as Walt Disney when he came out here to chase down his dreams. So even though this does reflect some of the Spanish architecture, like I said before, that we see in our neighborhoods and cities, I think that they want to go more with this aesthetic right here. We can just see very subtle design decisions all around Splitsville to just create that aesthetic. And I, for one, invite a lot more of this. And then once again, you can see there's another bend in the road. So even though it used to be where we're at was as far as we could see, that design trick happens again, whereas World of Disney and the Grand Californian are placed at an angle, keeping our line of vision, not knowing that the end of downtown Disney is just literally on the other side of those buildings. If this was a straight shot like any street that you see in the city that you live in, you'd be able to look from one end to the other. But the S-curve that's been planted in here keeps your imagination and your exploring a little bit longer than if it was just a straight shot to the theme park. Because let's be honest, once people see the theme park, they don't care about any of this stuff. They're like, get me in those theme parks. So all this is designed to make you slow down, take a little bit more time in downtown Disney, because once you see Disneyland, it's done. So now when we look at the S-curve from the opposite direction, you can see that Tortilla Joe's is positioned in a way where that's our anchor going back. And if they're going for a cohesive design, even more of a reason for that to get taken out, unless, hear me out, the only way I could see them saving this, if budget doesn't allow what they originally envisioned, one could argue that a smaller Mexican cantina in the middle of the street with the larger Spanish building behind it, it would be the same design aesthetic echoed, but I believe they're going for a pretty modern design of what this taqueria in the middle of the street's gonna look like. So therefore, it wouldn't be total design balance between your foreground and your background, meaning, once again, Tortilla Joe's days are very numbered. So using Splitsville as our backdrop because it is way, way, way too loud over in the construction zone, there has been a absence both in the Force and in downtown Disney, and that Sprinkles has decided to go away. Now, it seems that Sprinkles still does have a positive opinion of working with Disney because their location out on the East Coast is still inside of Disney Springs. So it's not like, nah, we're out on working with Disney, but I do have a good idea of why they're like, we're out on working with downtown Disney, because their location would be right in the heart of this construction zone. And with the construction walls having two dead ends, their walk up for people to buy cupcakes and cookies would be very, very severely limited, as it would be hard to get there. I'm sure Pele and Love Pop are both seeing a significant drop in sales because of how difficult it is to get over to those two locations. So when we see that Sprinkles decides to go away, it makes sense. And keep in mind, when you have a business located in downtown Disney, you pay rent and you also pay a percentage of sales, essentially making Disney your partner. And that might sound expensive to you, but then also consider from Disney's perspective, as we try to be fair and balanced, this is an area where essentially you have holiday shopping 365 days of the year. There is never a shortage of thousands of people walking past your shop each and every day. So Disney expects a lot, but fairly, I think they also offer a lot. So seeing Sprinkles go away when they would be paying exorbitant rent and also having very limited foot traffic and giving a percentage of sales, which, you know, I would assume during construction, you kind of need every nickel from every sale because they are right in the thick of the shit. And it is wild right now in downtown Disney. Like, it's 11 o'clock on a Friday and the drills, jackhammers are just going and going and going. It sounds like an Adam the Woo vlog. So as I do zoom in here, let's go all the way up. That is the old Sprinkles and it's completely blown out. Which makes me wonder, is that how they're able to access, like get some of the larger equipment in on the second floor, where we can see workers up there right now working. All right, so I apologize for the volume, and that was love for Adam, because I love that he just powers right through. But I'm gonna walk back here and just show you A, how loud it is, and B, what low visibility Love Pop has, as well as Pele, because those construction walls are right back there. They're guiding everyone over. So you're not gonna get any casual passerbys. Anybody who comes here is coming here for these two shops, and there's the Sprinkles area right there that's blown out. Is it blown out for a transformation over to Clyde's or another restaurant? We don't know. Or is it blown out to allow the workers to have better accessibility to get large supplies up and down, or a housing area for this restaurant that's coming here? But yeah, you can see what difficulty these vendors are gonna have making a buck this summer. And the summer season at Disneyland is one of the busiest seasons, especially when you have a soccer store where you're selling shorts, light t-shirts, you know, things that maybe people don't pack, maybe a pair of more comfortable tennis shoes. So they're going to take a financial beating this summer. So really not a ton that we can see inside of the construction pit at this moment. I would go up to Ballast and film in, but I don't drink, so I don't know what I would get at Ballast Point, and it's not really lunchtime yet. So maybe in the future when that goes vertical and there's some stuff to dive in and see, I'll find a good reason to go to Ballast, or bring a bud that I can buy a beer and gaze over into the mini Sarlacc pit. But you can see that everything that was vertical has been removed. So people that thought they were just going to refabricate the existing Cattell restaurant that's set out front, no can do. They're completely removing this and pulling this back. And I've also come to learn that I believe the second floor of the home store, as well as Wonderground Gallery, where I used to be a Wonderground artist and actually print posters live inside of those windows, stay on focus, Brickey, up here I believe has been extended into more space for the upper restaurant, which I believe, I'm unsure, is it Paseo that's going down here? Or is it Centrico? Centrico. However, to keep everything fair, because you know I like to think of myself as somebody who covers the news fair, if you're going to get rid of the Jazz Kitchen because it's a little too gaudy, then some of this needs to get toned down at some point, because those water waves, this bizarre, like, I don't know, kind of gothic art deco, not a fan. Not as offensive as Ralph Brennan, but it doesn't match the new aesthetic either. So it'll be interesting to see how the transformation takes place, but man, is it loud in there. And wanted to do the vocals on purpose in there just to give you an idea when you come out to the Disneyland Resort how insanely loud downtown Disney is right now. Wow, if we look at this, workers in there right now, we are seeing the foundations of the new expanded downtown Disney happen today. It has been about a year since this land has sat pretty much just a dirt pile, the downtown Disney Sarlacc pit. But if we look in there today, we can actually see the concrete work on the very first foundation is being poured. This is exciting stuff for nerds like us. You can see them putting the actual concrete in where all of the metal framework for the concrete had been laid in. Another truck pulling up, delivering more of that sweet, sweet concrete. Wow. Big things literally to come to this location. Let's go up in our slow-mo ride on the monorail and hop into the studio and break down exactly what else is happening inside the downtown Disney Sarlacc pit. All right, friends, let's hop over into the studio for me to do the voiceover on this, because obviously I can't do it while I'm looking out the window of the monorail and in slow motion, obviously. Let's start with the left-hand side of your screen. This opening you see, that was the very first thing that we saw happen in this project. Back in like February of last year, we saw them blow this area out. That the entire time has been the entry point for all the heavy machinery coming and going. But then right next to it, where you see sort of that beige wall and the green fencing, that's the only thing that is original from the AMC building that was here. There's a wall that they kept, and I believe on the inside of it is all of the electrical work that will power this part of downtown Disney, and it also powered the AMC theater. So that's everything that we see along the back wall. But then as we work forward in our camera, we can see that they are laying concrete in the bottom right. And then up above that concrete, you can see where they've got the steel in there. I believe it's still like a wrought iron that they use, where they basically block out like a grid. So then the concrete attaches to that steel, and that allows the foundation to be nice and solid. I think it also reduces like cracking and breaking, things that could happen over time. But then that machinery that we see right there in the middle of the screen with the blue of the Disneyland Hotel Adventure Tower behind us, that's the machine that pours the concrete. So the concrete goes all the way up that huge pipe, and then the workers down below, they sort of position that where they needed to, and then they just basically load up that metal grid with the concrete, and then there's a crew that goes over to smooth it out, like our homeboy over here in the bottom left of the screen, who's down on their hands and knees getting that nice smooth finish. But if we look at structure number 1 in front of us, we can see a main room or main building, but then notice those 3 little areas, we'll call them pools, those 3 little pools over on the left. That's probably going to be like 3 separate little rooms, or maybe some sort of infrastructure to power whatever next to it. But we're already starting to see, due to the foundation, how things are going to go vertical. All right, let's move up a little bit more in our super slow motion. And you can see a massive amount of concrete has already been poured, as well as we can see concrete blocks in that pathway between the two. You can see the concrete blocks there with the rebar that's sticking out. Once again, the rebar gets put into the ground, then the concrete blocks sort of feed on top of that, and the rebar gives more strength to that wall. So now we have a question here. This little walkway that we're seeing behind the two smaller foundations within the three pools that we're calling them on the back side, that walkway looks pretty narrow. I don't know if that's something that us guests will be walking down. So is maybe the building on our left-hand side, is that something that's backstage for this area that will exist behind this larger, much larger area? And that would actually be stores, and what's positioned behind it is some sort of backstage or housekeeping that they need for downtown Disney, because the walkway between the two seems very, very narrow. And I doubt that they would have guests walking in between that. Also, I know that there's going to be a stage in this area. So I don't think that the stage would be that close to a building. Maybe there's another way to see this where actually we're looking at it from the straight part. And this would be over on the left, a building recessed back. And then over on our right would be another building that's closer to the main walkway. But the concept art showed things more in a cul-de-sac where the buildings would be facing the adventure tower of the Disneyland Hotel and not facing the sidewalk across from the monorail and where the Star Wars Galaxy's Edge trading post is at. And now also that the camera's moved out a little bit, look at the trajectory of the concrete spill. When we were back from the other angle, it looked like the concrete was basically just going up like in an upside down V and dropping back down. But you can look at that trajectory of the path that the cement has to travel to get put down into the foundation. This is magic. This is straight up magic how these folks build all of this stuff. All right, let's move up a little bit more. You can get an idea of the scale of this first building, but then looking beyond that on the other side of the courtyard that we have no concept art for, that's a lot more land. I mean, we're talking about, they took out a Starbucks, a retail space, a massive AMC movie theater, as well as Earl of Sandwich. So we have a very, very big footprint here for lots of stuff to come from. There in the middle, you see all that lumber that looks like a bunch of folded up tables. That's the wood planks that they use to sometimes frame some of this work, but also sometimes those are used as the outer exterior of the land. And if you notice, they have taken down a lot of the wood and they have moved over to the green tarp. And by doing the green tarp, that allows them at night when the guests aren't there to actually open up the fences and bring in heavy machinery that maybe they can't pull around the backside. So friends, after not seeing a lot of movement, this is going pretty fast. We can see an original tree there. And then you can see here, the dirt is really packed on the edge. And you can see how they have cut out the sidewalk. This has gotten much more narrow, this little area here. They've cut back more sidewalk. Absolutely fascinating, because if you look over in front of the screen and then directly behind it, those light posts, that indicates where the walkway used to be. So, wow, a lot is going on, and I mean a lot. Cannot wait to check this out with you next month in June, because by then we're going to see some things framed and probably even more concrete work showing up. That was awesome. All right, let's walk down to the eastern end of downtown Disney and look at something fun that popped up in the Esplanade area. But so far, all of this is pretty much staying the same until we get to Old La Brea Bakery, where there is going to be a transformation that's going to take place, but we don't know exactly when. The temporary Earl of Sandwich is going to go away, and the Portos is going to show up, which is going to add a high demand right on the edge of the Esplanade. And literally, I'm afraid of bottlenecking when everybody's trying to get into the park, but there's also people that are like, bro, do you Porto? So it was always explained that this was going to be very temporary, but I hope that Disney pays attention to the popularity of the Earl of Sandwich Tavern, because it has shown that there is people looking very much for an affordable, quick place to eat in downtown Disney. And I hope that that is service, because I know, speaking from example of my own life, I look for quick and manageable in downtown Disney more than I look for complicated and reservated. So I was here yesterday when these gentlemen were putting in the sandcastle celebrating the Little Mermaid in theaters May 26th. Did you do the Obi-Wan Kenobi ones down at the far end?
Same company, wasn't me though.
Same company, different sculptor.
Different artist, yeah.
Well, hey, I'm glad you got more than one artist. That's amazing.
Yeah, we're all over the place.
That's great. Yeah, there was the Obi-Wan Kenobi one that was there a while back, which was really cool outside of the Star Wars Trading Post. And it came in here yesterday, and they were sculpting on this, and I kept watching him spray it down. But you can see they've got their own GoPro going, doing some stop animation content, and then they have some of this jewelry here inside of this clam. But I'm a professional illustrator and artist, but man, oh man, I do not have a hand for sculpting. So looking at him chisel and dig inside of there to get every little curve, this technique just blows my mind. Look at that, he's just taking that little shovel and removing it out. And that's the thing about sculpting that a lot of people don't consider, that it's actually an art of subtraction versus an art of addition, meaning that if you start out with a blank canvas or a blank piece of paper, you're adding stuff to it. But with sculpting, they take a block and keep removing pieces to get to their final piece. My brain is just not wired to think that way. So you can see he's already got in the sculpted bust, and he's started to place coral reef sort of around Ariel. And look at that, he's just going right into her forearm, cutting in, making that definition of her forearm, and then grading out the beveled edge. Dude, I could watch this all day. I could watch this all day and somehow do play-by-play like it's sports. So you can see that he's already sort of shaped out what's going to be her fins or her bottom torso. You can see right there, he's standing by the hip. The knee's going to kick out. You can already see it bend down, even though there's that break there, where I'm assuming that the end of her fins are going to be right there on the bottom. So you can already kind of see the guide that he's going on, but he's still working on getting everything there above the arms, underneath the breast line, completely carved out. I love that tool has a little hand on it. Amazing. It looks like a spoon with a hand on it. Amazing. So as somebody who is keen to social politics and where the world is heading, I'm curious, is the security guard there to guard the Pandora jewelry on display, or is the security guard there in case anybody wants to make this a moment of acting out? Because unfortunately, there is a wave of controversy about this film, and I know that Disney, with having a face character probably coming to the park soon to do meet and greets, they want to make sure that Disney stays an inclusive experience for all. And speaking of that, we have another one of these on the horizon. What's the final day of Splash Mountain going to be like? We saw it go down in Orlando. Will it be different in Anaheim? I don't know. We live in crazy times, and unfortunately the parks have become a part of the political divisiveness of America, and it's just the way that it is. You know, I'm never going to ignore it. I don't want to get involved in it. But if you're going to cover something, you got to cover all angles. So I've never seen a security guard stand outside of an art installation before. This is the first time I've seen one of these media promotional items attached to a movie that has some of that nastiness attached to it. So if you look around backstage, they have even more jewelry that are put on display in these fake coral rocks, where they have the folks from Pandora have put in a plate of glass so you can look in and observe the jewelry. But they also have these buckets of more sand, and it'll be interesting to see, does this pedestal here get taken over? And there's obviously power that's running out there, and then we have another Pandora display of this little treasure chest. So it looks like the folks from Pandora are going to have jewelry on all four corners. But we can look in. He has a guide on his iPhone that he's looking in for his frame of reference. Or no, maybe he's just filming himself. Who knows? There is no water in the fountain, but still magic setting off my magic band from the Disney 100 token there. And I have to say, my magic band goes off like crazy in downtown Disney, but barely does anything inside of the parks, which is kind of a disappointing factor. I feel like they're making it go nuts in the place where people buy them, and then kind of ignoring the place where you would consider there to be the most amount of magic. So yeah, fountain is looking thirsty. Oh, and randomly, they're playing the song about the girl that loves water. So there you go, friends. We looked at all the new things that are happening this month in downtown Disney, the various different architectural projects that are really starting to take shape and take form. And we even got to look inside of the Disney Sarlacc pit to see what's getting ready to happen on that western end of downtown Disney, where there is a lot of stuff on the way. So if you enjoyed this weekly update looking inside of downtown Disney, please consider subscribing to the channel, where each Saturday I take you and do an update of Disneyland, DCA, downtown Disney, or the Disneyland hotels. Thank you so much for showing up. I hope you had fun looking at all the developments of downtown Disney. I can't wait till we do it again next month. And if you want to have some fun in the park fun, make sure you check out these two videos right here. This one I show you all the fake buildings of DCA, and over here I show you where my vision, based on research, how Disney's California Adventure is set to expand and how Hollywoodland holds the keys to a better future. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you real soon.